говорю тут, там не треба згашувати. Там нехай буде тут.
Він вилучений тепер.
Шановні пані і панове, пане льорд-майор, в імені управи відділу СУБу маю особливо велику приємність привітати на цьому ювілейному концерті у відзначення 40-ліття творчої діяльності нашого відділу СУБу першого заступника голови Союзу українців Великої Британії, вельмишановного пана Лещука. Вітаю всіх членів Ради Союзу українців Великої Британії та бувших голів нашого відділу і членів їхніх управ, які своїми трудами посвятою до обов'язків нашого суспільства уможливили нам діяти і відзначувати оці ювілейні 40-ві роковини. Вітаю вас, всіх членів СУБу і гостей на цьому ювілейному концерті, який є призначений у відзначення 40-ліття існування нашого відділу СУБу. Ми святкуємо цей ювілей як ювілей СУБу, який створили і активізували його в діяльності члени нашого Союзу для продовження тяглости одержаної спадщини від наших предків, які кличуть нас продовжувати змагання щоби осягнути найвищі національні ідеали. Дякую. My Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, my Lord Bishop, Lady Williamson, very Reverend Fathers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain, Bradford branch, I have a great pleasure in welcoming you to this concert tonight, which is dedicated to mark the 40th anniversary of our first settlement in this really beautiful city of Bradford, and also 40th anniversary of formation of Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain, Bradford branch, which is foundation and the cornerstone of our existence as community. Short outlines of this anniversary will be made later on during this program by Volodymyr Temchuk in English language. Welcome once again, and I wish you all enjoyable evening. Thank you. Вельмишановні пані і панове, для визначення цього ювілейного концерту до нас прибули на наше запрошення гості, які посвятили свій вік своєї юності служити українському мистецтву, розгорнувши свої крила, підсилені духом завзяття, за що стали визнані зовсім заслужено репрезентативними ансамблями Союзу українців Великої Британії, хор «Аоун» та балет «Орлик». Імені управи відділу СУБу і зібраної тут шановної аудиторії я маю особливо велику приємність вітати в першу чергу маєстра хору «Аоун» пана адвоката Павла Гуньку і всіх хористів гомонівців. Я рівно ж вітаю балетмайстрів і хореографів балетного ансамблю «Орлик», паню Марію Бабич і пана Дмитра Парадюка і всіх орленят. Вітаю наших власних сумівський балет, крилаті і їхні мистецькі керівники Олю Степовну Бовс і Михайла Дякового. Всім вам бажаю я найкращих успіхів у вашому виступі. Щасти вам Боже!
A ja pidu sonny sztemy You have just heard the Ukrainian male voice choir Homin from Manchester under the conductorship of Mr. Pavlovunka. The choir is a newly formed ensemble of an ensemble which we have, or the people in Manchester have created to commemorate the thousandth year of Christianity in the Ukraine. The choir Homin itself, as I hasten to add, has been in existence for over 35 years. The song that you have just heard, Rozběhajte chlopci koni, which literally translated was Unsaddle Your Horses, basically doesn't explain what the song was about. The song basically explains the loves and lives and times of the Ukrainian Cossacks. The next song you shall hear, Tançüристи, Orlyk, is a ballad, the words by Taras Shevchenko, the greatest poet the Ukrainian nation has ever had. It basically the bandurista was a minstrel who travelled with the Cossacks on their way to war, and during the travels he would, through songs, sing and explain to the nation the history of the Cossack race and the wars and the great victories that they had had. And the third song you shall hear, Reveta Storny, also words by Taras Shevchenko, is basically about the Dnipro River, the river that runs through the middle of Ukraine, the river on which Kyiv, the capital city of Ukraine, stands. Reveta Storny, basically translated, is the roaring and the raging of the river, which encapsulates, I think, in one phrase, the feeling of the Ukrainian people, both in times of peace and in war. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Now staying with the Ukrainian Lancashire connection, we are happy to present the Ukrainian dance group Orlyk from Manchester under the choreography or directorship of Mrs. Maria Babic and Mr. Dmitro Popadyuk. They will do 3 dances. First, a mixed dance called Orlycha. Secondly, a duet under the name of Semen, danced by Hania Bohuslav and Mr. Petro Kuzhiu. And finally, another mixed dance, Oi Chodila Yuvchenonka. Thank you very much.
Нащо мені та спільниця, як ти сама, як мазниця. І не гарна, й не красива, ще й Семена полюбила. І не гарна, й не красива, ще й Семена полюбила. Ой-ой.
Ой, ти гарний Семене, і дитять коло мене, і подушка в мене є, сватай мене, Семене, і подушка в мене є, сватай мене, Семене.
Нащо мені та подушка, як ти сама, як пампушка. І не гарна, й не красива, ще й Семена полюбила. І не гарна, й не красива, ще й Семена полюбила. Ой, Боже.
Ой, ти гарний Семене, і дитять. І корова в мене є, сватай мене, Семене, і корова в мене є, сватай мене, Семене.
Нащо мені та корова, як ти сама, як ворона. І не гарна, й не красива, ще й Семена полюбила. І не гарна, й не красива, ще й Семена полюбила.
Ой, ти гарний Семене, і дитять коло мене, і червіті в мене є, сватай мене, Семене, і червіті в мене є, сватай мене, Семене.
Якщо гроші в тебе є, будеш жінкою моєю. Ти ж гарна, ти ж красива, ти ж голубоси зокрила. Ти ж гарна, ти ж красива, ти ж голубоси зокрила.
fathers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. 40 years ago, Andriy Koleta was the first Ukrainian to settle in Bradford in May 1947. Since that time, over 3,500 Ukrainians have made their home in the city. It was the Yalta Agreement that brought them here when Europe was divided between a non-communist and a communist Europe after the Second World War. Its effects are with us today, and this meeting is a living example that Yalta is not just something that happened a long time ago. Towards the end of the war, millions of former Soviet citizens found themselves in Western Europe. At least 2 million of these were Ukrainians who were taken to Germany as forced laborers. The Nazi occupation of Ukraine cost 7 million lives and the destruction of hundreds of towns and villages. The years of Stalinist terror, including the terror famine of the 1930s, left Ukrainians with little goodwill towards the reoccupying Soviet Russian regime, which waged war against Ukrainians struggling for the independence of their homeland. It is no wonder that many Ukrainians refused to return home. However, as we know from Operation Keyhole, many Ukrainians and other Soviet citizens were sent back against their will, only to be executed or deported to Siberia. After international protests and the officers concerned, the forceful repatriation was stopped. As a result, thousands of Ukrainians found themselves in what were known as DP camps, displaced persons camps. Here, they were under the protection of UNRWA, the United Nations Refugee Relief Association, if they could prove that they would face persecution on return to their homeland. It was here where screening was carried out to weed out undesirables, such as war criminals. At this time, over 40,000 Ukrainian Canadians of the Canadian Armed Forces were based in Europe. A certain Captain Panchuk of the Canadian Air Force learnt of the plight of the Ukrainian refugees. He was one of the first to organize relief work amongst them and to present their case before the appropriate authorities. In addition, he was one of the founding fathers of the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. The first Ukrainians to arrive in Britain were those of the Canadian services who set up their own group during the war. The second were those 5,000 Ukrainians who came with the Polish armed corps from an original group of thousands deported to Siberia by the Russians in 1939 and then subsequently released to join the Polish armed forces in Palestine. They were followed by the EVWs, European volunteer workers from the displaced person camps, to work in Britain's undermanned industries, such as textiles, agriculture and mining. And finally, the 8,000 members of the Galician Division, which served with the Germans on the Eastern Front against the Russians. The British held these in custody in Italy and Britain for several years, during which time they were screened and its war record thoroughly examined before allowing them to settle. The Ukrainians who arrived in Britain were literally penniless in a foreign land with no command of the language and knowledge of native customs. As families arrived in Bradford in 1947, one of their number, Mr. Ivan Smereka, was appointed by the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain as the first acting chairman to set up a branch in Bradford to look after the welfare and interests of Ukrainians in the city. On the 26th of December 1948, the first annual general meeting of the association was held with 160 members. In the following 6 months, a choir, drama group and dance group led by our resident Mr. Ostap Buryak, a professional dancer and choreographer from Kiev. In addition, an exhibition about Ukraine was displayed to the British public. Alongside this, Basic welfare services were provided, such as help with form filling and approaches to the authorities and employers for the new arrivals. An extraordinary general meeting was held in May of that year as the membership's ranks swelled with the former POWs. Mr. Cordoba became the new chairman of the association with a membership now of 409. Sadly, this was the year which marked the first major split in the community, when a smaller group broke away to join the newly formed Federation of Ukrainians in Great Britain. This division has coloured the outlook of all the members of the respective Ukrainian organisation. Despite the split, the association's membership had increased by more than 200. The majority of the Ukrainians in Bradford consistently choose to support the association. By the early 50s, the association bought its first premises at the famous Claremont Address in Bradford. Its membership reached a peak of 730. The late Mr. Orlyk arrived to set up one of the best mixed voice choirs in the country. A music teacher from Ukraine, his work still bears fruit in the cultural activities of young Ukrainians in Bradford. The sports club Dnipro played an active part in the city's amateur football league. By 1952, the membership decreased to 569. Many Ukrainians emigrated to Canada or America, where they felt they had better opportunities and the quality of Ukrainian life was superior. In 1953, the Ukrainian school was opened, with over 100 pupils attending under the guidance of Mr. Vasily Popadinets. In 1955, an autonomous body within the Association of Ukrainians, the Ukrainian Information Service, was set up to inform the city about the community's activities and the current situation in Ukraine. We have just highlighted some of the points of the early days of the association in Bradford. A group from Canada arrived in 1956 to document the life of the community as part of a project on Ukrainians in the diaspora. Sadly, all of the film footage and valuable, unique documentary material collected was destroyed in a car accident in Europe. In 1956, the association founded the social club to satisfy the recreational needs of the community, as well as a means of raising funds for its activities. Ukrainian Catholic and Ukrainian Orthodox priests attended to the spiritual welfare of the community. The parish of St. Patrick's allowed the Catholics full use of their church and facilities. The Anglican Church of St. Mary Magdalene's did the same for the Orthodox. By 1957, the Catholics bought their first church at Lillycroft, and by 1964, the Orthodox bought a church in Eccleshill. The late 50s also saw the success of a talented drama group composed of professional actors who worked in the theatre in Ukraine. It attracted actors from all parts of the country. Peter Holdsworth, theatre critic of the Telegraph and Argus, encouraged them to join the Bradford Playhouse after watching one of their productions. The 60s were marked by the building programme for the new hall. At last, the various groups would have somewhere to practice. In 1963, Mr. Bakhmat took over as head of the Ukrainian school, with 280 children attended. This was the year when Michael Cheruk took over from the Ukrainian Information Service and became a founder member of what became known as the Captive Nations Committee. It subsequently developed into an important pressure group, publicising the cause of oppressed peoples in Eastern Europe. Mr. Cheruk still plays an important part in the committee's work as secretary to this day. In May 1970, the Ukrainian community was honoured to welcome the late patriarch of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, Cardinal Yosif Slipin, who spent 18 years in Russian concentration camps, the sole survivor of the Catholic hierarchy, liquidated by the Soviet regime in 1946. 1,000 Ukrainians met this living martyr and confessor of the faith at Eden Airport. He was greeted at the town hall by Alderman Newby. The 70s were a period of steady growth as the association consolidated its position. Many see this as a peak of the association's achievements. 1975 was a special year, since this marked the most serious rift in the community's history. Whereas previously, if people had political differences and attended different centres, they would nonetheless worship under the same roof. The majority of Ukrainians in Bradford are Catholics. Although 90% of Ukrainian Catholics, including priests and bishops, recognise Cardinal Slipy as their patriarch, the Pope did not. This dispute over the autonomy for the Ukrainian Catholic Church continues to this day. Despite having two churches in Bradford, Ukrainian Catholics are compelled to use the association's hall for its services. A young generation has grown up worshipping in halls and never knowing a permanent parish priest or parish life. In 1976, the Dibrova Choir issued an LP to mark the 25 years of its formation. It also included many members of the second generation. Sadly, with the death of Mr. Orlyk in 1983, it gradually folded up. In 1978, the chairman of the association, Mr. Orlyk, began proceedings to purchase its latest acquisition, these premises at Westfield. It was bought for £65,000. The final contract was signed in December 1979. Our present chairman, Mr. Parfenyuk, took over in 1979. The whole centre needed refurbishing, an enormous task to put it lightly. Can anyone imagine the personal cost to himself and his family to see this project through to its completion? And the association is indebted to his commitment in carrying out this thankless responsibility. I've briefly skimmed the surface of the past 40 years' activities. I've only considered Bradford and ignored its relationship with other communities. The association's members do not live cocooned lives totally engrossed in its own particular activities, but has participated in national events organised by the association's central committee and other bodies. It has sent representatives to international events, such as conferences held by the anti-Bolshevik bloc of nations. It has supported Ukrainian institutions abroad, such as the Ukrainian Free University in Munich, the Ukrainian Catholic University in Rome, to name a few. Several books were published with the support of the Bradford branch. It has provided financial support to artistic groups, such as this evening's special guest, Homin and Orlyk, the representative group of the association in Great Britain, who have not only toured this country, but Western Europe and North America. It has also played host to numerous guests from abroad and this country, politicians, writers, academics, numerous performing artists. The list over 40 years is considerable. Again, we must not neglect the welfare activities and the association's contributions to 2 homes for the elderly in Derby and Chiddingfold, near London. Sadly, for a variety of reasons, many elderly Ukrainians do not speak or understand English. Most of them have been independent during their working life, and now, at their advanced age, have difficulty in coping. It is fortunate that the local authorities' social services recognise this need and are providing them with support. In all this time, the association's membership has never forgotten the reason it is here. Its members have never accepted the brutal Russian occupation of Ukraine. It has never surrendered and accepted Moscow's puppet government in Kiev. It has never identified with Moscow's lackeys in Ukraine, but with the Ukrainians of the modern catacomb churches, those languishing in the concentration camps, psychiatric institutions, and those who are struggling for a free and independent Ukraine. Despite these achievements of the past 40 years, the association is not content to rest on its laurels and promises to play an active part in the forthcoming celebrations to commemorate the millennium of Ukrainian Christianity. 40 years have passed, and only a few people have been named in this short survey, with which Mr. Nicolishan kindly helped me, of our association's past. We also express our gratitude to the British people for allowing the Ukrainians to settle here and for their humanitarian assistance and protection after the war. But our thanks must be to the nameless men and women who have dedicated their lives to serve in the Ukrainian community, who know that man does not live by bread alone, but is on this planet for a purpose. By their self-sacrifice, honesty, hard work and integrity, they achieved what they could with the abilities with which they were endowed. As for the future, we can say, in the words of Ivan Franko, we are the prologue, not the epilogue.
Don't panic, I'm not going to perform. I regret to inform you that the Right Honourable Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress of Bradford will leave us in a minute. And before they go, the Lord Mayor would like to say a few words to you. Please welcome the Lord Mayor on the ground.
My Lord Bishop, Lady Williamson, Reverend gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and children, can I express my sheer delight at being invited here tonight to celebrate the 40th anniversary of your association. Both my wife and I wish you a very happy birthday and a very successful 40 years hence. It's fairly obvious that your cultural activities have led to this very high standard of performance that we've seen tonight. Maintain your culture, maintain your religion, because outside in the streets of Bradford, there are those around us who are without culture, who are without religion. So my advice to all minorities is maintain your culture. It has been a pleasure to be here tonight, and I thank you for inviting me. Thank you, sir.
The male voice choir homie will now sing 3 songs. The first one, Pere, or Forward, is a marching song sung by the Ukrainian partisan army during the Second World War. The second, Vetri, Serenade, and the third, Zakovala Taseva Zazulia. Again, it's a Cossack song which explains their fight against the Ottoman Empire. Thank you.